Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flight Lieutenant Gregory Young. Following the outbreak of the Second World War in September 1939, the British Admiralty called on its dominions for men to serve in the Royal Navy. There were serious concerns about maintaining an adequate number of naval personnel to keep their ships at sea. In what became known as the Yachtman's Scheme, men of the Royal Australian Navy Volunteer Rescue were recruited through yacht clubs. After advertisements were placed in the newspapers of capital cities in June 1940, roughly 500 Australians went on to serve as yachties. These men saw action in some of the most dangerous naval campaigns of the war, from the battle for the Atlantic to the D-Day landings in the vastness of the Southwest Pacific. They performed convoy escort duties from Malta in the Mediterranean to Murmansk in the Arctic, and had the dangerous duty of rendering mines safe at sea and along the coast of England. This evening, we will share the story of Ordinary Seaman William Robert McGregor. We warmly welcome his family who are watching the live stream of this ceremony, and we also warmly welcome author Janet Roberts-Billett, whose book, The Yachties, Australian Volunteers in the Royal Navy, 1940 to 45, was launched today in Canberra. We are honoured to acknowledge Major General Kato Yasuhiro, Japanese Air Self-Defence Force, Joint Staff Director General, C4 Systems, accompanied by Major General Murray Thompson, Head of ICT Operations Division and Strategic J6. Air Commodore Amanda Dines, Director General, Health Reserve Air Force, accompanied by Lieutenant General Pierre Neerinks, Aide-de-Camp to His Majesty the King, Belgium Surgeon General and Director General of Health and Wellbeing. Mrs. Angela Heisey and Brigadier Retired Jonathan Beasley on behalf of Microsoft's Global Defence and Intelligence Community and their accompanying delegations, and Mr. Dennis Lyons representing the Naval Association of Australia. We warmly welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of St Thomas School from Goodwood, South Australia, Barrenjoey Montessori School from Avalon, New South Wales, and Condell Park Christian School from Condell Park, New South Wales. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Soil
Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Ordinary Seaman William Robert McGregor. William McGregor was born on the 23rd of December 1911 in Richmond, Victoria, to William Sr. and Blanche McGregor. His father was at various times a commercial traveller and motor case maker. Known as Bill, young William had 5 siblings: Roy, Mabel, Alan, Jack, and Blanche Marjorie, best known as Bon. Bill was the youngest. The family suffered losses when Bill's sister Mabel died in 1927, William Sr. in 1933, then Jack in 1936. The family lived in Middle Brighton in Melbourne, and Bill eventually gained employment as a bank official. Following the outbreak of war in Europe in September 1939, Bill enlisted with the Royal Australian Naval Volunteer Reserve on the 21st of October 1940 in Melbourne. After initial training at HMAS Lonsdale and Cerebus, Bill was sent overseas, travelling to the UK in late 1940. Travelling on the SS Largs Bay as it steamed via Fremantle, Durban, Cape Town, Sierra Leone, before arriving in England in early December. Bill had been sent to serve with the Royal Navy as part of the Dominion Yachtsman Scheme. Some 500 Australian yachties, as they become known, served in the scheme, while some of the initial draft had sailing experience and were members of yacht clubs in Australia. The vast majority, such as Bill, were recruited from the Royal Australian Naval Volunteer Reserve and had little or no experience at sea. After nearly 2 months at London Depot, Bill was among a draft of B-class volunteers sent to HMS Collingwood, a shore establishment and entry camp for new recruits. Batches of about 1,000 trainees joined every 3 weeks for a 10-week course. Collingwood was situated across the harbour from Portsmouth, near Fareham. The daily routine included a bugle call at 0600, roll call, then thorough cleaning of huts before breakfast at 0730. After parade, the day's training would begin. Alongside British recruits, the Australians stood out due to their higher standards of training in Australia and the superior level of education. Recruits looked forward to going ashore, meaning times when they had leave to relax and enjoy themselves in town. Fortunately, beer was cheap in the pubs and entertainment was free to servicemen. But on the downside, following bombing raids, the men were formed into working parties for the grim task of looking for survivors. After his course at HMS Collingwood, Bill commenced his next lot of training back across the harbour at HMS Victory on the 16th of April. Victory was another Royal Navy shore establishment where men would typically be posted for further training or awaiting assignment to a vessel. Being a major naval base, Portsmouth was heavily bombed during the war, with raids beginning in July 1940. Ultimately, the town and port suffered almost 3,000 casualties, including nearly 1,000 killed. 3 major blitzes hit Portsmouth in January, March and April 1941, causing widespread death and destruction. On the night of 27th of April, the German bombers come again. While not of lengthy duration, the raid was nevertheless heavy. High explosive and incendiary bombs were dropped and damage to residential properties was considerable. 2 hospitals were damaged, causing many casualties. A heavy barrage of anti-aircraft fire met the raiders and 2 enemy bombers were shot down. During this raid, Bill McGregor was on fire watch duty with fellow sailor Clive Taylor when the bombs hit. The blast blew Taylor yards away, but he survived. Bill was not so lucky and he was killed outright, becoming the first of 35 men of the Yachtsman scheme to die during the war. He was buried in the Hasler Royal Navy Cemetery back across the harbour at Gosport. Bill was 29 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Ordinary Seaman William Robert McGregor, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea. No flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the developments project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.